Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next comment or question comes from Classic Arcade and Amusement Park Videos. And this is in response to Wish Phantom was class compliant. System 1 Operation Vague, a mailbag added in February 2023. And Classic Arcade writes, totally agree. Being class compliant is another advantage to Yamaha and Korg. Roland came out with a Fantom-O to compete with the Yamaha MODX, but left out this important ability. The MODX has great integration with iOS, which the Fantom-O does not have. You can also use one cable with the MODX and connect an iPad or an iPhone to the MODX and use the MODX built-in audio MIDI interface. This also means you don't have to spend money to buy additional interfaces. After all, the MODX and Fantom-O are also more about being on a budget and less clutter and greater simplicity. The Fantom-O has several lack of multi-sample memory. At just 256 megs, it is not enough. The old MODX had 4 times that at 1 gig, and the MODX Plus has 1.75 gigs. I prefer the MODX sounds to the Fantom, but the Roland's software options are another reason why the majority of Fantom sounds and engines are available without needing to buy one. No, I've got that wrong. But thanks to Roland's software option, I can have the majority of Fantom sounds and engines without needing to buy one. Might help if I read it correctly. Although the MODX has more competition than it originally did, I think it will continue to be what is probably the best-selling keyboard, not counting maybe toy keyboards, in the USA and maybe the world. The whole class compliant issue I find a bit weird, and I'd really love to know officially why Roland have adopted this stance. Maybe it will come out at some point. Somebody will spill the beans on why they've done it this way. In this space, I think there is really only 2 contenders at the moment. But as I've said many times on the channel, many giggy musicians prefer the MODX concept as opposed to the other options that are on the table. Cost is obviously a feature of this type of board, but many have also reported that its portability, the portability of the keyboard is a key factor if you are moving between gigs all the time. Anyway, that was some great information on some of the differences between these 2 contenders. So thank you very much. Next comment or question comes from Dylan Perry. And this was in response to the Yamaha TX-1P What's Inside the Box video I did in July 2018. And Dylan writes, I just picked up one from eBay, but it's faulty. I can't send it MIDI control data from Logic, and it won't make any sounds. Any thoughts? Where do you start? Where indeed? Now, first thing is, are you sure that there's actually a MIDI signal getting into the unit? I know this sounds a bit daft, but I've had MIDI cables that have not been transmitting MIDI because of various reasons, probably snaps and breaks in the cable because they've been wound and unwound so many times. But it doesn't help that you can't see what's going on with MIDI. So the first thing I probably would say is try and find out whether your box is receiving that MIDI signal in the first place. Logic is actually sending something. And these types of issues probably require a lot of patience and maybe an oscilloscope. The first thing is to look at the board and see if there are any obvious signs of damage. So open it up and look at the board and see if you can see any obvious signs. Now, obvious signs of damage could be burnt resistors, so you'll see blackening around on the resistor, or you'll see blackening around the resistor, which shows you that the resistor is getting very hot and therefore is probably burning out, and its resistance is breaking down. You're looking for things like a what looks like a stain around capacitors, which would indicate that the capacitor has leaked onto the board and therefore is not acting as a capacitor anymore. And if you find those, then you probably need to replace them straight away. The other thing is to look at the board and see if you've got any dry joints. Units of this sort of age typically have, they basically dry out, the joints dry out. It's a relatively easy fix. You just get a hot soldering iron and reflow the solder. So you just tap it on there to get rid of what looks like a dry joint. Now, dry joints, they manifest themselves in many different ways, but typically what you look at is if you can see cracking in the solder, that's a fairly good indication you've got a dry joint going on there. And the next thing is to get hold of the service manual and look for the digital to analog circuits and see if you have any signals being generated. So find out which pin on which chip generates the audio signal and see if you actually are generating an audio signal. That could indicate your DNA chips and op amps have failed at some point. You basically have to trace the circuit through. It's a laborious process. I've done it quite a few times, but it is a laborious process to actually find out what is causing the problem. And if these are generating the signal, then follow this through, basically through the circuit board to the outputs. Definitely places I would start, but as I said many times on this channel, diagnosing a fault with a keyboard is not a crystal ball exercise. You really, it's kind of a painstaking move through the keyboard circuitry until you find out what you think is failing.